We got you. Appreciate your kindness. Have a great day. Thank you. Hi, good morning.
San Diego International Airport.
Perfect.
It's late September, and 85 U.S. Navy HAL 3 Seawolves are boarding an honor flight from San Diego to Washington, D.C. Holly Schaffner is the PR director for Honor Flight San Diego, one of more than 130 hubs in the National Honor Flight Network, which raises money, plans the trips, and escorts military veterans to the nation's capital to visit the memorials.
Prior to 2022, we've taken all World War II, Korea, and terminally ill Vietnam veterans on their honor flight. And to date, we've taken over 1,500, but we knew that it was time to open up to the Vietnam veterans. We have 240,000 military veterans in San Diego County alone. And out of those, about 60,000 are Vietnam veterans. So we really had to be strategic in how we were going to open up our trip to Vietnam veterans. And when we searched for how we were going to do it, we wanted to go big. So we did research and we found the most decorated naval unit of the Vietnam War and the most decorated naval unit of, and still today, of naval aviation history. So that's why we started with the Navy HAL 3 Seawolves.
If the name Seawolves isn't ringing any bells, you're not alone. The Navy SEALs and river rats who served in the Mekong Delta between 1967 and 1972 know them as heroes and saviors. Outside of those circles, the Seawolves are largely unknown, even among Vietnam War historians. If you haven't already listened to episode 40, we suggest you do that before proceeding. In this episode, I'll travel with 85 Seawolves from San Diego to Washington, D.C. You'll hear some familiar voices like Mel and Tex, and I'll introduce you to some fascinating new characters who'll shed additional light on the Navy's most decorated and arguably least celebrated aviation squadron. Stick around. From the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, founders of The Wall, this is Echoes of the Vietnam War. I'm your host, Michael Crone, bringing you stories of service, sacrifice, and healing from people who still feel the impact of that conflict nearly 50 years later. This is episode 41, Seawolves, Part 2.
Port out. Ready. This. Present. Out.
It's a cool, gray, misty morning in late September, and we're at Arlington National Cemetery watching the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns. The Seawolves, who've been borderline rowdy since we first gathered in San Diego 2 nights ago, are completely silent. It's the first time I've seen their reverent side. It's heavy and palpable. They're old men now, several of them in wheelchairs, but you get the distinct feeling that if you were to break the silence, even accidentally, these men would disintegrate you with their eyes. We had flown into BWI the day before on an Alaska Airlines charter with "Honoring Those Who Served" painted on the fuselage. By the time we boarded, the Seawolves had already gotten a little taste of what it means to be on an honor flight. They'd been treated like royalty everywhere they went, including at airport security. But nothing could have prepared them for the surprise they received in mid-flight.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding.
You remember Tex, right? Of course you do.
My best friend, Gary Bork, Gerald Bork, we were sitting at the very back when those big bags of letters and cards and stuff were handed out to us.
Somewhere over Oklahoma or Arkansas, the Honor Flight San Diego team announced mail call. Every veteran on the plane received 2 large bags of mail, one from school kids and members of the general public, the other from friends and family, all of them expressing pride and gratitude for the duty these men had performed more than 50 years ago. None of the Seawolves saw this coming.
I was eager to see what some of the messages and things were. And that lasted about 5 minutes. And I had to take and put everything back in the big bag and fold it up and put it up underneath my seat. My emotions got the best of me. I couldn't read because I couldn't see through the tears.
Tex wasn't alone. My seatmate, a door gunner from California, tucked right into the cards from the school kids, a huge smile across his face as he read a handful of those. But then he opened the other bag, and that smile gave way to an expression of, well, it was as if every emotion a person can feel was fighting for the rights to his face. "They've got one in here from my sister," he said. And a few seconds later, he had to put his mailbag away, just like Tex. And I suddenly realized something essential about these Honor Flight San Diego people. They don't mess around.
The grounds itself, they're about 600 acres, a little over 600 acres. They're currently building to expand towards the Air Force Memorial.
Back on the tour buses, we drive by the Air Force and Marine Corps memorials. Around 10:15, we arrive at the U.S. Navy Memorial on Pennsylvania Avenue, where we get off the buses for a short ceremony and a tour of the visitor center.
That's what Mama put out there. And that's what everybody. Yeah, and you ate what Mama cooked, or you went hungry. That's the way it was in my house.
This is the first stop of the day where the Seawolves can be off the buses, relaxed and unhurried. They laugh and share stories and take photos with the Lone Sailor, a statue overlooking a plaza-sized granite map of the world's oceans. The Seawolves show off their knowledge of naval history to each other and delight in learning new things about the Navy. I learn a lot here too, including about Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, the youngest chief of naval operations in American history, who's credited with modernizing the Navy in the 20th century. It was his command of the mobile riverine forces in Vietnam that led to the creation of the HAL 3 Seawolves. Back on the bus, we're served box lunches on our way to the next stop, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I sit with Bob Britz, one of the first Seawolf pilots to arrive in Vietnam after the squadron was officially commissioned in April of 1967. Is this your first time visiting the wall?
This will be my second time.
And is there anybody in particular on the wall?
Yes. James Burke. He was an ensign. We went through flight school together. He arrived over in Vietnam about 2 months after I did in 1967. And he was flying at night and got into a thunderstorm, and the plane just couldn't stand the turbulence, and it crashed. And as a result of that, his parents had requested that if there's any way to get his remains back, that they would appreciate it. And I knew him really well, went to flight school and knew his family. I ended up escorting his remains back to Detroit to his family, and then returned back to Vietnam after that. And in fact, his young brother, at the time that I was at their home with the funeral services, He was then 6 years old. He is on this tour today.
Jim Burke's brother.
His youngest brother, and he became a Navy pilot and then became an American Airlines captain.
So he's on the tour as a guardian.
He is. He called me up. He says, "Bob, this is Tim Burke." I was 5 years old, and I didn't know what was going on at the house. Everybody's in tears and crying and yelling, and you looked at me and came over and you said, "I think you and I need to get out of here." So I picked him up and took him up, put him in my lap, and we went out and drove the car around out in the parking lot. And, and then he just calls me out of the blue. And he's here. He's on this trip.
After stopping at the World War II Memorial for some group photos, we arrive at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial around 1 o'clock. It's the first time many of these Seawolves have ever seen the wall and the 44 names of their fallen brothers. It's also the first time that some of them have ever met each other. With 85 of them on this trip, enough to fill 4 charter buses, new connections are made and shared connections are discovered every hour of the day. These conversations are the same, but the tone is different. They're more laden with meaning when they happen at the wall.
He was coming back and he had priorities, so he kicked me off, and he went to his debt that night. He was killed.
Yeah.
Him and Peterson both. Peterson was done flying.
Yeah, no, he was ready to go home and went back, and he and I went through SEER school together. We're both from California. I took the coin to his uncle because Mom and Dad didn't want him going over. Yeah, it was a sad day at BC Lake.
Yep.
Rich Lambert.
John Shields.
John Shields.
Yeah, he talked him into flying one more night.
Yeah.
I'm here because he was there. I was on the aircraft. It was my flight. He was coming back from R&R, and he said, "Tony, I've been traveling for 2 days. Would you mind if I took your seat?" So I got off, he got on, the helicopter crashed, and he was killed.
All 4 of them.
All 4 of them.
Who were the other 2?
Bob Worth was the other gunner, and then Tony Ortez and Buzz Bazell were the pilots.
Yeah, Joe Ramos.
You guys mind telling me your names? Just so I have it on the recording.
I'm Tony Nelson.
Tony Nelson. Yeah. Gary Bork. All right, Gary, I remember you from the last night. I'll leave you alone. Thank you.
Right, sir.
I see a couple of people from our group, a veteran and a guardian, who look like they could use some help finding a name on the wall. So, you forgive me, I remember your last name, McLemore.
Malcolm
It's
Mac Il Moyle.
Oh, I was close.
Yes.
But I don't remember your first name. Was
Rick.
it Rick?
Rick.
Yeah, okay.
Another Rick.
Yeah. And when were you in Vietnam with the Seawolves?
71, 72.
Yeah.
And my claim to fame is, which I love sharing, is...
He shows me a picture on his phone.
This is Commander Mulcahy, her father.
Oh.
Crewman, the XO, and that's me. And that was the crew of the last flight.
The last, you were the one who I was talking to about turning off the lights.
Yeah.
You guys were the last ones out of there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's.
And he was over at Arlington now.
Wow. Oh, and tell me your name.
I'm Kathy.
Kathy.
Catherine Mulcahy. I'm his daughter.
So you flew out of there with her father.
Well, we made the last flight, and then of course shipped everything else out after that.
Gotcha.
But that was basically the last official flight of HAL 3.
How about that? Wow. And what was your job on the aircraft?
I started as on the line crew, moving aircraft around, and then I started flying and became a air crewman.
An air crewman.
And because we came home early, or I came home early, it was March instead of July, I couldn't make that step out to the detachments, which I've always regretted. But
Man,
you look at gunners and you know they're up here to me. and I want to be up there too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine that they would say they couldn't have done their job without you.
Yeah.
And you said Ron Cole was your friend who's on the wall.
Crone.
Sorry.
Well,
Crone. I should have gotten that right.
I knew his brother Dave, and I met Don just before Don went to Vietnam. Okay. And then, like I said, I was in A school when my girlfriend told me that Don was killed.
And then how long after that did you get your orders?
2 days.
2 days. Wow.
So it was something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that typical thing you think, okay, I'm going to go revenge Don. Yeah, was I stupid?
Well, I mean, everybody at that age, right? All males, all 19-year-old males are.
I wasn't that old yet.
You weren't that old yet?
I was 18.
18. Yeah. Yeah. So you hadn't reached peak stupidity.
No, but I did while I was there because I turned 19 in October.
Yeah.
26, line 74.
All right. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be on this line. Well, here he is.
Schaffnacher.
Michael Scheffernacher. And this was a Seawolf also?
Yeah. That was the list that they gave us.
And this is also for a family
Yes.
who's not here.
Right. And his mother, from what I understand, because I'm new to the flock, was very much involved with the Seawolves after her son was killed. And so I think Linda's his sister, but she was there as well at the send-off.
I spot Tex standing by himself, observing all of this. He's rarely alone, so I check in with him. You having a big day?
It's one of those days that is so many mixed emotions. But this is my 10-year anniversary. I was here in 2012 reading names. Now I'm here in 2022 with my squadron mates. And it's such an emotional roller coaster. You're laughing and goofing with one of your brothers. Next time you turn around, you're crying. Can't stop it. It's just what it is. But when I was here in 2012, my very first time here, my very first time to really face what this is, I touched the wall and the wall smacked the hell out of me. Now, it's doing the same thing. It's doing the same thing.
Is it any easier?
Yes, because I know that when I go home, I'm not fighting demons anymore. I haven't totally kicked them to the ground yet. Some of them they're still lurking back there in the background, but it's a lot easier to be able to deal with them.
Who are some of the guys that you come here to look for specifically?
One in particular, Michael E. the Delta Mauler Schaffernacher.
Oh, I just came from Schaffernacher, 26 West.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about him? Because the people I was with, they didn't know him. They were doing it for his sister.
I never met him.
But you come here to look for him?
Specifically.
Why? After a short break, we'll find out why Michael Schaffernacher is so important to these Seawolves, even those who never knew him. Stick around. Well, guess what I have here? It's a news release announcing the 2023 tour dates and locations for The Wall That Heals. That's VVMF's exact replica of the wall at 3/4 scale that travels to communities all across America. If you want to know more about this traveling exhibit and the impact it can have on visitors, listen to episode 15 of this podcast. More than 100 communities applied to host The Wall That Heals next year, which is the 50th anniversary of the close of combat operations in Vietnam. The tour schedule includes more than 30 cities and towns, stretching from South Carolina to Idaho and Maine to California. Is it coming anywhere near your town? Visit vvmf.org to find out. Just a little heads up, we'll have one more episode for you early next month, and after that, we'll take a little time off for the holidays. We'll be back in the third week of January. And finally, a word about show notes. For each episode that we put out, we also publish what are called show notes or episode notes, which contain additional information and resources relevant to the topic. But it's been a busy month here at VVMF with the 40th anniversary activities, so we're a little behind on getting those show notes published to our website. The notes for these 2 Seawolves episodes will include things like a link to the documentary, Scramble the Seawolves, which you can stream for free, and links to the Seawolves Association, Honor Flight San Diego, and U.S. Navy Memorial websites, among many, many other things. So if you're interested in seeing the notes for these 2 episodes, 40 and 41, just email echoes@vvmf.org, and I'll send them to you.
Okay. Mike and George were shot down in Cambodia.
Mike
Schaefer-Knocker.
and George
Page.
Page. And what were there? Was one of them a pilot? Were they both gunners?
They're both gunners.
Okay.
That's Pat Sammel. He served with the Seawolves in 1968 and 69, first as a maintainer and then as a door gunner, and he's currently the president of the Seawolf Association. I asked him why so many Seawolves, including Tex, hold Michael Schaefer-Knocker in such high regard, even if they never met him.
Mike was trapped in the airplane. George was burnt. They got George out of medevac. They couldn't get Mike out.
They got George out when? Like how long was he in there?
The medevacs came in about 20 minutes after they crashed. And they couldn't get Mike out because it was twisted, and the VC were coming over the hill. So it was either go or try to fight off a 100 VC. The prudence says, let's get out of here. Mike was dead, actually, so it was not like he left behind a living soul. He got out. Mike was declared dead right there because they went back and later recovered the body. George was shipped to the States. He went into Balboa, I guess, to the hospital, and he died later of infection in his burns. He wasn't, at least he had 2 weeks with his family. And Mike's mom, we called Mama Knocker, she adopted all of us. We were all her kids. We go to a reunion, everybody had to get a hug. She drove the traveling wall for all the veterans. Any veterans she saw got a hug. It didn't make any difference. If she didn't know them, it didn't make any difference. Mama Knocker gave him a hug. A big old Texas hug. She'd go to DFW Airport. She knows about guys coming back, get through the airport. She was there, and everyone got off that airplane got a hug. She would help people. If she found a veteran that was in need of help, she'd take them in. stay at my house till you get on your feet. So, use that kind of person. And she wanted to do anything she could to help veterans.
Mama Knocker became the de facto den mother of seals, river rats, and sea wolves everywhere. Tex met her for the first time in September of 1983 at the Miller Outdoor Theater in Houston. He was there for a big stand-down veterans event, and as usual, was wearing something that identified him as a sea wolf. He had twisted his knee beforehand, so he was walking with one crutch, making his way up to the amphitheater, when all of a sudden, these two big guys come out of nowhere. One hits him high, the other hits him low, and Tex is on the ground, fighting for his life.
They were gentle about it, but I didn't know who it was. The fight was on. And I had to quit trying to fight them because they were laughing so hard. I said, what the hell is this all about? There is someone that has requested your presence, and we are making sure that that request is satisfied.
As it turns out, Mama Knocker was attending the event. She had heard there was a sea wolf in Houston and had issued orders to her seals that if the sea wolf could be found, he was to be brought to her immediately.
So they took me down to where Mama Knocker was at, and we sat down and talked and cried and laughed and joked, and she became my second mom.
My favorite part of that story is the two guys who delivered you to Mama Knocker.
Yeah, they did too.
Seals.
Yes. Yeah, SEAL
She sent a SEAL team after you.
SEAL Team 1.
Bring him to me.
Yeah, and these are old guys too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What year was that?
1983.
Oh, man.
It was definitely an experience.
You were extracted.
Oh, I was definitely extracted. Same thing we used to do for them, they did to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Tex and Mama Knocker remained extremely close until she passed away in 2016 at the age of 89. And she is the reason why, when Tex finds himself at the wall, he seeks out Michael Schaefer Knocker, a sea wolf he never met, specifically and deliberately.
I worked for telecom companies, and I did the Greater Dallas Metroplex for about 3 years. And about 3 times a week, every day at lunch, I would go to the Texas State Fairgrounds, to the Rose Quartz Wall. It's the Texas Wall. And I'd take a little nylon flag, put it by Michael's name. I'd sit down, eat my lunch, conversate with him and the rest of the guys on the wall. Then I go back to work. It was the way I was healing myself.
The Seawolves spend a total of 2 hours at this stop, touring the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Korean War Veterans Memorial. Individually or in small groups, it's an intensely emotional time for everybody. And the day isn't over yet. We hit the Washington Navy Yard, the oldest shore establishment of the U.S. Navy, where we take some more group photos and tour the U.S. Navy Museum. By then, we're all pretty well worn out, and the bus ride back to the BWI Hilton is relatively subdued. Dinner and the closing ceremony provide the final crescendo for the weekend. The dais in the large hotel ballroom is decked out with 8x10 photographs of the 44 fallen Seawolves, complete with rubbings of their names from the wall, courtesy of VVMF, and 44 folded flags donated by Miramar National Cemetery. Kicking things off is Mel Titano, daughter of Seawolf Anthony Rosario and board member of Honor Flight San Diego. She doesn't seem to have lost an ounce of energy as she delivers a personalized version of Howard Schnauber's poem, Old Glory.
I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory. I fly atop of the world's tallest buildings, and I stand watch in America's halls of justice. I fly majestically across the great institutions of learning, and I stand guard with the greatest military power in the world. Look up and see me. I stand for peace, truth, honor, and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident, I am brave, I am proud, and I am ready. When I am flown with my fellow banners, my head is held a little higher, my colors a little truer.
Mel goes on for 6.5 minutes, entirely without notes, making eye contact with seemingly every Seawolf in the room, building momentum and emotion as she goes. The room is already on its feet by the time she finishes, to an explosion of applause. If Dorothy Schaefer-Knocker's the Seawolf mama, this is their little girl. After dinner, I managed to pull Mel away from her adoring fans for a few minutes. Tonight is the culmination of 3 years of planning for her, an event that she had pictured with her father in it, that ended up taking place without him.
Well, you must be drained.
A good drained.
Were there any surprises?
I really didn't know what to expect. It was heartbreaking to see some of the veterans, overwhelmed with emotion because they couldn't believe how they were being treated. It was heartbreaking because our veterans should never feel that way. They all should be treated with respect, and know how grateful we all are for them and for what they did for our country. It broke my heart to see that.
Because you're realizing that they didn't get that 50 years ago, and they haven't had it a single day since.
Right.
Until now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really. I don't know. And I've said it a million times, but my heart is just so full. I feel like seeing how happy they are. I know that my dad and Mr. Crutcher and the 44 Fallen, Bill Summers, and all the brothers who have passed, I know they're looking down, and they're looking down proud of their brothers who were able to participate in this weekend. You just know that they were there in spirit.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, there are some Seawolves who knew about this and chose not to come. Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you, if your father had lived, do you think he would have come? But the more I get to know you, the more I think he wouldn't have had a choice.
Yeah. No, he wouldn't have had a choice.
How long is it going to take you to process this weekend?
I don't know, but gosh.
I was talking to Tex. He said, it's going to take him weeks.
Yeah.
And Tex is somebody who's not been out of touch. Like, he's been fairly active and involved in, but this still, even so, this weekend kind of bowled him over. Yeah.
These are tough guys. So when I see some of them who, like I know some of them who don't really show emotion, and to see them overcome with it, but in a good way, a happy way. There's no greater feeling than knowing that this brings a smile to their face, and them knowing how much we all appreciate them, how much America appreciates them, and what they did, and how brave they were.
One of the big surprises for Tex on this trip was running into his old bunkmate from Vietnam, Michael Cole.
I left in November of 71, and Mike left. Well, Mike was there to the very end, March of 72. And I hadn't seen Mike since, oh, good Lord, since November of 71. And the honor flight in San Diego, we didn't see each other in San Diego. We saw each other after we got off the Alaskan Airlines flight in Baltimore, Maryland. That was a pretty crazy little happening right there. I was walking down the concourse, and this guy was asking one of the guardians, well, where's the nearest bar? I need a drink. And I just made the off comment, and I said, yeah, they better have a full bottle of Jameson's Irish whiskey. And then I looked at his name tag, and it was Michael Cole, my old bunkie. And his first comment was, you know, I was worried that I wouldn't know anybody on this flight. Well, come to find out, he definitely knew somebody on the flight. And we got into a bear hug that lasted quite a few minutes. And there was a little bit of tears going on. I know there was on my part of it, because it was so good to see Mike after all that many years. I mean, a full 50 years. That's you have memories of people and specific little things that you carry those memories all the way to the grave. But the chance to see Mike up close and personal, and to stand at the bar and toss down a few shots of Jameson's with him was definitely a good reunion.
When we landed back in San Diego, I got off the plane first with the other members of the media. I'd been told that there would be a big crowd of people there to give the Seawolves the welcome home they didn't receive 50 years ago, and I wanted to have my recording gear ready. As I exited the jetway into the gate area, there were a few dozen people gathered and already cheering. Not bad, I thought. Then I walked over to the escalator that leads down to baggage claim, and I glanced down. There were more than 1,000 people down there, cheering and whistling and waving flags. The Seawolves hadn't been told about this ahead of time. It would be a surprise as they stepped off the plane and descended the escalator.
Wow, that is unreal.
Are you speechless? This is probably the biggest welcome home we've ever had.
Yeah,
No, about
Probably
yeah.
also the most speechless he's ever been.
Yeah, that's the damn truth. From coming in incognito in November 1971 to this, man, I don't think I have words that'll do justice. I really don't. I don't have words.
It's just a fantastic homecoming. Yeah, unbelievable.
Beautiful thing.
Traveling with these men, getting to know them and their remarkable story, is one of the most enriching experiences of my career. The thing about these guys is they don't seem to care whether you were there in 67 or 72, whether you were an officer or an enlisted man, whether you were a pilot or a door gunner or a maintainer or a member of the administrative staff. A Seawolf is a Seawolf. It was true 50 years ago, and it's true today. Here's how one of them put it in the documentary, Scramble the Seawolves.
I love my family. I love my mom, dad, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. But there's nothing like love of a sea wolf.
We are so grateful to everybody who participated in interviews for these 2 episodes. It means a lot that you're willing to share your experience with our listeners. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the warm welcome and guiding hands of the wonderful folks at Honor Flight San Diego, especially Julie Brightwell, Lisa Gary, and Holly Schaffner. And I want to send a very special thank you to Jeff and Shannon Arbayo for letting me use clips from their amazing documentary, Scramble the Seawolves. There are also a handful of people I spoke with who didn't make it into these episodes, but whose perspectives informed the storytelling. If we spoke on this trip and you didn't hear your voice in the final cut, I'm talking to you. And finally, thanks to Dr. Eric Villard, a friend of this podcast, for checking a few key facts and preventing me from quite possibly pissing off the entire 1st Cavalry Division. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more stories of service, sacrifice, and healing. We'll see you then.